going to be discussing Heretics Are No Longer Burned at the Stake, which is going to be a look at the book Tribes, We Need You to Lead Us by Seth Godin, how this fits into the idea of a hyperlinked library, and how library services can be impacted by the ideas in this book. Tribes, We Need You to Lead Us by Seth Godin takes sort of a meandering walk through several anecdotal episodes, all of which work together to illustrate and reiterate several main points that Godin is making regarding leadership and our current culture. The first of these points is that the status quo is a bad thing. The status quo is no longer what we want to go for. Change is in the air, and in fact, trying to maintain the status quo is boring, unfulfilling, and will leave you behind in the dust. Life is too short to be boring, so don't stick with the status quo. The second point is that innovation is interesting, it's exciting, it's fun, and it's rewarding. So you don't want to be a status quo, you want to be on the side of innovation. You want to be one of those leading the change and changing the world. The third thing is that leading is about change and empowering others to fulfill their potential. On the flip side of that, management is about maintaining the status quo and squashing any kind of creativity that people might have. It's not about the individual, it's not about making things better, and it's certainly not about changing the world. Instead, it's about the rich getting richer, the people in power staying in power, and the people below following them blindly. Fourth thing is that people are looking for someone to lead them. They have passions, they have ideas, they have their own creativity, and they want someone who is going to be able to help them harness those ideas and that creativity, someone who is willing to take the risks and lead change and to connect them to others who share the same passions and ideas. And together, they can form those tribes or those groups of people who go out and advocate for what it is they're interested in. The fifth thing is that leadership is hard. It is a risk. You have to be willing to fail, you have to be willing to go out on a limb, and you have to be willing to do something different. You have to be willing to stand up to management and people in charge and to come out with a new idea, whether you do that within a company or you just go out on your own and you try it, a new model of service. And the sixth thing is that leaders change the world. So what are you waiting for? How are you going to change the world? And what are your passions and interests? And how can you build a tribe to help you do just that? Godin also talked about how tribes are really connections. They are groups of people, whether it's a few people or thousands of people who are passionate about the same thing, who are advocates, evangelists for what it is that they just feel so deeply and strongly about. And leaders are those who connect those people together, whether they actively lead them or whether they just create the environment where these people can meet each other and grow, thrive, and become better as individuals and as a group and change the world, fulfilling their potential. The fifth chapter of the book, The Clue Train Manifesto, which was written by 4 individuals, Rick Levine, Christopher Locke, Doc Searles, and David Weinberger, is called The Hyperlinked Organization. And this particular chapter was written by David Weinberger. And it has a lot of the same things as Tribes. It talks about how with the internet, people are so much more connected and so much more able to have conversations that now people are looking to make changes. They're looking to fulfill their potential. They're looking to challenge the status quo. Weinberger referred to corporations in the status quo as fort business, places that wall people off, that have authority, that demands you listen, that doesn't have a place for the individual for change, for new ideas, that suppresses information, squashes creativity, and has a very strong hierarchy. This same kind of idea of business was called a factory by Godin in Tribes. However, because of the connectivity of the web and the ability of people to talk to others outside and inside their organization, this fort is crumbling and the walls are being penetrated by the web. It's important in a hyperlinked organization to have conversations, real conversations between individuals, in which people are honest and open and willing to talk about how to make things better and how to get things done. And in a hyperlinked organization, people know who is the best person to go to, whether or not they are the next person up on the chain of command. They know the person who is going to be able to help solve the problem, and oftentimes a low person down on the totem pole will circumvent the entire process to get the right answer to the customer and to make them the center of the organization. Another thing that is emphasized by both Godin in Tribes and by Weinberger in the hyperlinked organization is the fact that mistakes are okay. In fact, they should be encouraged and allowed. Mistakes aren't going to kill the company. They aren't going to have disastrous results, although sometimes it feels like they might. In fact, as Godin points out, the worst thing that might happen is that you're criticized. And if criticism is the only fear that you have of making change, and it's the only thing holding you back, you should seriously look at your priorities and what you're trying to achieve out of life, because everybody can live with a little bit of criticism. It's not like you're going to die, get fired, or you'd get burned at the stake like an old heretic, like a heretic of old. Weinberger also talks about how there's so much to know that there really isn't an expert on everything anymore who can answer every single question you have. In fact, in his chapter, he writes that increasingly a useful expert is not someone with or containing all the answers, but someone who knows where to find answers, which to me sounds exactly like somebody who works in a library. We may not know the answer, but we can look it up for them. We can help a patron find the answer, whether it be in a book or on the web or another person that they need to talk to. So how does all of this play into library land? How do we take the idea of building a tribe, of galvanizing people to take action, of making them passionate, harnessing their creativity and their potential, leading them forward? How does this all build into a library's model? We can lead change in the library, in our workplace, by coming up with new ideas of ways to do things, new ways to serve the public, and looking at what the public needs, asking the public what they need, and looking at new ways to give them those resources. But it could also be giving the resources and the opportunities for the public to be their own leaders, to find their own tribes, whether it be resources on the internet, whether it be a computer, a meeting space, books, ideas, letting people get together to join together and create their own tribe, whether or not we're even active in leading it. But maybe it's another individual in the community who has a passion, who has a desire to lead change or to get people together. Another thing we can learn from tribes and from the hyperlinked organization is the idea of transparency, or letting the public look behind the curtain and see what's going on. Let the public know how we do things, or when we're making a change, letting them have a voice. This was done successfully by several different libraries in redesign projects, including the Los Angeles Library, who has put out a survey asking people to give them feedback for the library of the future. Several libraries have also allowed teens to have a huge voice in how their spaces are designed. These libraries include the library in San Francisco, in which teens were given a voice and they were listened to. It wasn't as if the adults just took down what they said and then made their own decisions. They actually let the teens make those decisions and followed through with them. Also, the Teen HQ at the Dr. Martin Luther King Library, part of the San Jose Public Library System, was designed with teens on the advisory board giving their input. The whole idea of involving the public in the redesign or the reorganization of an area had me thinking about my library. Our children's department isn't particularly functional the way that it is set out. It's hard to see different parts of the library. There's a lot of noise, and while we have tons and tons of toys for the kids to play with, which is a huge part of our library philosophy, they end up all over the place and get in the way of our poor shelvers who are trying to put books on the shelf, and the public who is trying to get through the space. We wanted to be able to make this a more welcoming and inviting place with better colors than the reds that were chosen by designers. in more brightly child-friendly designs on the walls. However, I now want to go to my manager and ask her about involving the public in how we redesign this, because while we might think we know what would be the best way to put the furniture, where the best place for the books and the toys and the computers are, it might be interesting to see what the public who actually uses the space thinks, what kids think, what their parents think. Not teens shouldn't be the only ones who get a choice in the way something looks, and neither should librarians. An idea that I had to make this feasible would be to have a very large blown-up floor plan of the department and then create 2-scale pieces that show all the different things that need to fit in there: toys, computers, the bookshelves, the reference desk. Make them all magnetic and put them out in a place where patrons could play around with reconfiguring things and putting them different places. And then, that the library can know what their ideas were, we could have either an email address, they could take a photo and send it to the email address, or they could add a hashtag to an Instagram feed that we would look at. And then we could take all these different ideas and see what creative ways the public comes up with for fitting all the things that we want into our space in the best possible way. We could also have some suggestion notepads where they could write down different other things that they want to happen or to see in that space. And we could take those into consideration as we work on our redesign. So let's build a tribe in the library. Let's find those people who want to lead. Let's give them the resources. Or let's be the people who lead the change, who are willing to bend the rules at the customer service desk, who know who to ask to get something done, who can go around the system to find the best person for the best job, who maybe aren't experts, but who know everyone who is an expert in a different part of the library. Let's be those leaders who galvanize a change. What are we waiting for?